And you've just heard Both Sides by the Eves from their new EP of the same name. And I'm so pleased to be joined by Marissa and Caroline, who are the Eves now. Hello, both.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm really well, thanks. I'm really good. So the first question, and you can decide between yourselves who's going to answer it first, but what can you tell us about the new EP and the songs on them?
The new EP, well, I think the Eves have gone down a bit of a darker pop route. We've actually kind of gone back to the very beginning. If you cast your minds back to Tides and to the Christmas track we did a few years back, it was that kind of singer-songwriter pop rock vibe that we were going for. And then obviously during the pandemic, we were pretty restricted with what we could do at the studio and working with musicians and such like. So our sound had kind of developed into that more pop dance sound. And that was just kind of down to who we could work with and what was available at the time, right?
Right.
So we've done that. We've done the pop dance thing. But for this new EP, we really wanted to get back to a more organic pop sound. So you probably hear that with the guitars and the pianos coming through, and we've got a wee bit of strings as well. So hopefully it's a bit more contemporary, shall I dare to say? A little bit more kind of contemporary pop. And we're absolutely delighted with the path that we're on now. We think this is the vibe for us, for a wee while anyway. So
But there's 4 songs on the EP, but they all kind of stand alone, and I think they do show quite a range. We just heard Both Sides, which is kind of quite big in terms of production and everything, and then later on we'll hear No Recovery, which is a much kind of gentler feel to it. And I was interested, how did you choose 4 songs out of things you'd written to be on the EP, or did you write 4 for the EP? How did it work?
it was really the 4 for the well, I suppose if you go back to the start, it was only one single we started writing.
Right.
So we were in the studio working with Dan Gautreau. We did the one single and we loved working together. And then we just kept going for a bit. And we got to 4 songs and I thought we could put that on an EP. We could put all of these out because they felt like a package.
Yeah.
If that sort of makes sense. It was a point in time, a package, wasn't it, Marisa? Yeah.
Yeah, I think even they're all quite different. I guess, yeah, it does show, both sides of the Eves. Because we're not a band who likes to just do one thing, like too much of one thing. We love a bit of upbeat driving pop or pop rock. But we love to strip it back as well and just focus on the lyrics of the song and the harmonies and things. So it is nice to be able to do both of those things.
And talking about stripping it back, there's a cover on there of The Best, which changes the song so much. It's fantastic in that way, because it really makes you listen. I don't think I'd ever properly listened to what Tina Turner was saying, because it's such a big production, her version. But you've brought it right down to the, as you say, to the kind of basics there.
Yeah, it is nice just to do that with a song sometimes, and we never really intended to set out to do a cover of that song. It was very organic the way that happened. We were just in the studio again with Dan, and we were on a bit of a break actually. We were just having a bit to eat and having a wee rest, and he was just noodling a wee bit with his acoustic guitar, and I went, "Oh, is that Tina Turner? Is that Simply the Best?" And he was like, "Yeah, I think it is actually." And there was something so lovely about the way he was playing, and we just started singing and then harmonizing, and it was like, oh, that's really nice. I wonder if we could maybe do something with that. And so it just came about. It just came about that way. And we absolutely love the version. Yeah, we really love it, and like you say, it's a world away from the original. You would never ever think to do that, but it is lyrically, it's a beautiful song.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to ask you why you chose that as a cover, but it sounds as though almost it chose you. It kind of covered you to do it. So why an EP? Why did you just feel that you said you started with a single? What was the single out of interest that came first?
So the single was called We're on Fire. And that was quite punchy, anthemic Eves type song. Why an EP? Well, I think the last single we put out, Alistair, was back in March 2023.
Mhm.
So that was after the Love. And I've been really itchy to put something out. And obviously we were so busy with tours and things the past couple of years. We're doing loads of gigs. So there was literally no time to get into the studio to do a body of work.
Yeah.
And we have other jobs as well, obviously, to bring money in. Because, there's no money to be made in music, right? So we've been working really hard at our day jobs. We've been doing all the gigs. We've been touring up and down the UK with Scaryvore. And we got a chance to work with Dan in January this year. And he's based in Fife. So we thought, great, we can actually drive there. And on a weekend, Dan, bless him, he put up with us having to come over at weeknights and weekends just to try to make it work. And when we got to 4 songs, it took us to kind of the summertime to get there. And I thought, if we're sitting waiting to do an album, it's going to take too long. And I was in a bit of panic mode, to be honest. I wanted to get something out for the fans, because the fans have been asking for stuff for a long time. And I wanted to give them something back. And that's why I thought, right, we've got 4 in the bag. Let's put them out and let's just show people what we're sounding like now. And the reaction's been lovely, hasn't it? It's been a lovely reaction.
So the fans have been reacting well and getting in touch and saying,
yeah,
it's great to have new music.
Yeah.
And I know you've been touring a lot, and either your own shows or supporting other people. And has that changed your own sound? I often wonder if playing live kind of changes people's sound further on.
Good question. Good question. I think a lot of the support slots that we've done and support tours that we've done, we've had to do as a 2-piece, and that's just purely out of necessity and budget and availability. And we have sort of tracks, and then we also play guitar and piano live. But touring with bands who have a full band kind of set up, drums, bass, the whole lot, that's something that we really, really want for ourselves, and we love that full band sound. And the live instruments and things, and I think maybe a bit of influence from that comes into the new music, because it's it's all real instruments, and that's kind of where we want to
that's where we want to be. But like we say, it always comes down to budget, and we have done semi-full band shows where we've got a drummer, Fraser, we've got a keyboard player, Gemma, and we also play instruments as well on stage. So we've got the 4 of us, but it would be lovely to bring in another guitarist to play electric guitar. It would be great to bring in a bass player. That's definitely on the cards for in the future. We just need to see if we can get some funding to kind of allow us to do that, because ultimately people need to be paid as well. So this is the big thing, so that's the dream anyway.
But that's a really interesting answer you gave, Marissa, about these songs. To me, they sound like they want to be played with because they're big sounding songs. And does that partly come from him? You mentioned Dan a couple of times, what he produced and co-wrote. Is that the relationship? Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah.
And is that partly so that it's given that sound the kind of heft that it's got?
Oh, he's an amazing producer, Dan. He really is. I think the Eves, we've always kind of written with quite big production in mind. We both love a bit of punch. We love an anthemic chorus, and maybe sometimes we could be accused of adding too much to our tracks at times. Sometimes we need to know when to stop. But yeah, it's just about doing what's right for each song. But I think a lot of the stuff that we do write lends itself well to a big production sound.
We did obviously sit down with Dan at the beginning of the session, and we let him hear artists that we love. So with a whole list of reference artists that have influenced us, that we love, who are going through things by Fleetwood Mac, Joseph and Lissy, and all of those really amazing acts that have really went and influenced us. And then we let him hear our back catalogue, and we said, listen, this is what we've done. This is kind of where we want to go, but doing it in an Eves way. And he's kind of listened to all that and built up the building blocks, and it just, boom, it just went and clicked into place. It was instant with Dan. It was absolutely instant. We just knew the second that we started doing We're on Fire, we knew that was the Eves. It was like, this is the Eves. Yes, we've arrived.
That's fantastic. That must be an amazing feeling to have.
Yeah, yeah, it was absolutely, yeah, I was ecstatic. It was goosebumps, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's always nice to work with a producer who kind of is also passionate about the music that you've let him hear, you know. We let him hear a lot of the stuff that we loved, and he was like, wow, you know, some of the bands he'd never even heard of. And he instantly was like, I'm loving this. So we were all on the same page with where we wanted to go, and you know, it felt easy to get to the sound that we wanted.
That must be great for him to hear stuff that he's never heard before, because this is someone that's worked with some big names in the past. So it's that's fantastic to introduce him to new music. And following on from asking, you mentioned, Caroline, about the EP and wanting to get it out, but it made me think about, has releasing music kind of changed for you over the period that you've been together?
I think so, yeah. I just think the world moves fast now,
Yeah.
right? Social media has kind of, although it's a great tool for artists, especially unsigned artists, right? It's a great tool. It gives us all a platform. It adds enormous stress because when nobody hears from you in 18 months, doing anything new, really, you start panicking because you quickly become yesterday's chip paper, right? So you're trying to get out there and you're trying to stay relevant. And, you know, I don't think the days of when you had bands that would go off and they'd do an album, that would take them 2 years in the studio to do an album, then they'd go out and tour it for 2 years, then they'd go away for another couple of years and come back. I don't know if that happens anymore. It seems to be a lot quicker, certainly for emerging artists. You know, I think if you're a legacy act or a really successful artist, then you've got that following and you know they'll always be there. But for us that's just trying to make our mark, I think we don't have that luxury of hiding for too long.
Yeah. So it's changed all of the arts in so many ways. I was talking to someone about Scottish theatre and how a similar thing, if you don't put on, you know, you could let a play run for a while and then maybe not do anything for a couple of years and then come back. But now it's almost that feel, I need to get the next thing out straight away. Same with writers as well. You know, it's like, instead of saying, well, I'm going to spend 5 years on my next novel, folks can easily think, well, what's happened to that person? It's very, very different. There's pros, but there's also a considerable cons as well, I think, in that.
The other side to that, though, is obviously it does keep you going. It does give you a focus and a target. It stops you being complacent and procrastinating. Because, you know, I guess if you never had a target, right, if you never thought, okay, we've got to get this out by then you'd never get anything out. Just take too long. I think it's getting that middle point, isn't it, Marisa?
I think it's hard in the creative industry as well, because creativity by default is one of those things that you can't force or predict when it's going to strike. And you know, certainly for me, I feel at my most creative when I have less on, you know, like if you go on a holiday or whatever, and if you relax and you're lying in the sun for a bit, okay, you get to de-stress and you get to forget about the world. And that's usually when ideas start to float in naturally, because you can't force these things. And when you're too busy in life, when you've got so many things to do, you know, you've got all the social media accounts to keep up with and emails and organisation tours and all the rest of it, there is no space or time, especially while holding down full-time jobs, there's no space or time to be creative. And that's really, really hard at, you know, as Caroline says, at the pace that life moves these days and social media and everything. You don't want to be forgotten, but at the same time, you do need that space to be creative and to actually come up with the material, and you need a bit of headspace away from the world sometimes.
We're just knackered all the time, Alistair, to be honest. We're a perpetual state of exhaustion. So
see, when you do capture something like you spoke about, We're on Fire, and just think, wow, this is fantastic. I can see why you don't just want to get it down, but you want to get it out as well to kind of share that excitement.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I was desperate to get that out, and I thought, well, we can't just put out another single, because we've done single after single after single. We've not put out a debut album yet. that's for funding reasons and for
Yeah,
time
yeah.
reasons. And we lost a good couple of years during COVID when we were just getting going.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we're playing catch up now. It's like, right, we've got the EP out now.
Mm-hmm. But the album's coming.
The album will come.
Welcome.
We can pin Dan down because he's a busy man, isn't he? So
Yeah.
But it's been so interesting for me to see the way that I don't think there's any right or wrong way to release music, but the different ways that people are doing it now. You know, they might release an EP and then release one song a month. So, you know, and that builds it up. They might go back to the old form of the album. They might release a single a month over a period of months. I think people are just looking for a way to do it because no one knows what the, in inverted commas, right way is. You know, there used to be some sort of model, and I'm not entirely sure that that model's there anymore.
yeah, I think the old model, wasn't it? It was, you know, if you had an album to put out, you would put out maybe 2 or 3 singles of the album, and then you'd put the album out. I guess what we did with the EP was a kind of waterfall approach, is what they call it now. So you put out the first track, then you wait maybe 3 weeks, put out the second track, so on and so forth. But we decided to put the last 2 tracks out at the same time because we thought there's only so much you can string it out, right? So
and then you get into Christmas time and
you think, well, you never got on the radio at Christmas time, so you know.
See, these are it's so interesting talking to musicians for the show because these are the considerations that folk who just listen to music have no thought. You know, it's just like, oh, that's a great new single. I really enjoy that. But there's so much kind of thought and other things that go into it. And we talked briefly about playing live. Are you going to be touring the EP, or at least doing a tour around the EP?
That's the plan. I'm looking into that at the moment. Hopefully for springtime next year, that's the aim. Do a small Scottish tour, 3 or 4 dates perhaps, and just see if we can tour the EP in the back catalogue for a wee bit. Actually be our own headline show, which would be lovely. But again, it all comes down to funding, budget. That's the key thing. It's so expensive now to tour. It really is. And I think, you know, in the streaming and revenues that come in, venues are under a lot of pressure. They've not got the same budget. Same with promoters. Everyone's absolutely skint. There's not been a great deal of funding being put into the arts sector, as you'll know. And I think everyone's really suffering now. The rate that venues are closing down is horrendous. And
also less disposable income for people
yes,
as
less
well.
disposable income. Just everything has gone up in price. The cost of putting on tours, events, lighting, sound. Everyone is absolutely squished now, and
there's a worry of selling tickets.
Well, it's a worry of selling tickets. Well, actually, we will probably lose money if we put on a tour, but it's a case of how much do we lose, and that's not because of ticket sales, because you could sell it out and still make a loss. Right, so this is the landscape now that we're in.
Yeah, because I think there's still, as someone who still goes to a lot of gigs, there's still the enthusiasm for live music. People love it. People love to be out and have that experience. But I know from bands that finding places to play is increasingly difficult because you know, venues are closing and disposable income. There's only so many tickets that people can buy. It's a difficult thing.
There's signed acts that are having to pull out of tours. You know, I mean, I was reading an article, I can't remember who the artist was, but they had to cancel their whole tour despite strong ticket sales because they were going to make a £40,000 loss overall. Who can make an income in that landscape, you know? So I don't want to sound all down about it, you know, and really negative. We'll hopefully put on some shows, but it will not be of the scale that we would love to do because we're unsigned. So there's just no funding apart from our own funding, really. So
what I would say is I think you guys have got your fan base is a strong fan base.
They're really brilliant.
Absolutely. You know, and so I think they will turn out to see you.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will. They're absolutely brilliant. Our evelings, as we call them, our evelings.
It is nice to have, you know, a solid base of true fans. And a nice base to grow from, hopefully, over the next few years.
Absolutely.
Well, I think the EP is fantastic, and I hope it will reach as many ears as possible, and your fans will love it. and hopefully you'll find some new ones along the way.
Thanks, Alistair.
Thank
That's
you.
really nice to know that you like the EP. Thank you.
Yeah, it's terrific. And we're going to play another track from it now. This is The Eves and No Recovery.